You ever wonder about this? I mean, when a beloved dog in a family passes away, does their lifelong canine companion actually grieve? We see them moping around, they stop eating, and we're just so sure they feel the loss. But what are they really going through in their heads? It's a huge question, and it gets right to the heart of what it means to be a conscious being. So, let's get into it. And this idea from anthropologist Dr. Barbara J. King, it's a powerful one. She's suggesting that this really deep, profound feeling of grief isn't some special thing that only humans have. Instead of this big wall separating us from the rest of the animal kingdom, what if it's more like a bridge? A shared emotional experience that connects us all on a really fundamental level. And we see signs of this in our own homes. There was this big study back in 1996 by the ASPCA, and it found that after a companion died, most of the surviving dogs showed these kinds of changes in behavior. And what's wild is just how familiar all this sounds, right? It's pretty much a mirror of how humans mourn. It takes this abstract idea of animal grief and grounds it in stuff we can actually see with our own eyes. And it's not just our pets either. The story of Taliq with the orca, it just captivated the entire world. For 17 days straight, over more than 1,000 miles, she would not let go of her baby that had died. It was just this heart-wrenching thing to watch, and it really forced a lot of people to stop and think about the sheer depth of what could be happening inside an animal's mind. So when we see these incredibly powerful displays of emotion, our gut reaction is to slap a label on it, grief. But what if that label, that very human question, is actually getting in the way? What if it's preventing us from seeing what's really going on? And this brings us to the first really big problem when we try to figure this out. A lot of researchers argue that our own point of view, our human-centered gaze, can seriously cloud the picture. We can't help but see the world through a human lens, and that can totally shape and sometimes, totally distort what we're actually seeing. Okay, so researchers Susanna Monso and Antonio Asuna Mascaro, they break this bias down into two parts. First, you've got intellectual anthropocentrism. That's the idea that for an animal to get death, it has to think about it abstractly, like we do, with big ideas about mortality and the meaning of life. Then there's emotional anthropocentrism, which is the assumption that the only real, valid way to react to death is with grief and mourning, just like us. So here's the crucial part. These biases set the bar impossibly high. We're basically asking a dog or a chimp to have the same philosophical toolkit as a person. And of course, when they don't, we just jump to the conclusion that they've got no understanding at all. We're looking for a mirror of ourselves, and when we see something different, we just write it off. But what if we just set aside all our complicated human ideas for a second and looked for something way more basic? This is what some call the minimal concept of death. And it's not about existential dread or philosophy. It's just the simple realization that another creature has stopped doing all the things that living creatures do, and that it's not going to start again. And this whole idea really breaks down into two simple observable parts. First is non-functionality. The animal just sees that another being is still, it's not breathing, it's not responding. The second is irreversibility. Just by seeing it happen over and over, the animal learns that once something gets into that state of non-functionality, it never, ever comes back. No abstract thought needed, just good old-fashioned pattern recognition. So if this minimal concept is something that animals can actually learn, where's the school? Well, it turns out the classroom is everywhere. For an animal, the wild itself is a constant, unfiltered, nonstop lesson in what it means for something to die. Just think about it for a second. In the wild, death is happening all the time. An animal that makes it to adulthood will have seen death constantly. Predation, whether they're the hunter or the one being hunted, gives them direct, repeated experience. And death isn't just something you see. It hits all the senses. The smell of decay, the cold feeling of a body, that profound, total stillness. These are all powerful clues that just keep reinforcing that lesson of this is permanent. Okay, so this brings up a really fascinating question. If a lion or a wolf develops this basic concept of death just from hunting, how in the world could we ever know for sure? We can't exactly ask them. It seems like it's locked inside their head. But there's an incredible piece of evolutionary evidence that might just give us the key. It's called thanatosis, or as most of us know it, playing dead. And this isn't just an animal freezing in place. Nope. It's an active, really sophisticated defense where an animal mimics the specific signs of being dead to try and fool a predator. And the Virginia opossum is an absolute master of this. It's honestly incredible. It doesn't just lie still. Its body goes completely limp. Its heart rate and breathing slow way, way down. Its body temperature actually drops. And get this, it can even secrete this foul-smelling liquid to smell like it's already rotting. It is a near-perfect imitation of a corpse. And this is the brilliant part. This whole elaborate, Oscar-worthy performance, it only works if the predator it's trying to fool actually has a concept of dead to begin with. You can only trick something that understands the difference between dead and not dead. The very fact that this defense even exists is really powerful evidence that predators aren't just reacting to stillness. They have a working concept of death. So, okay, a functional, basic understanding of death seems pretty widespread in nature. But we humans, we took it somewhere completely different. So let's shift gears and look at our own evolutionary past to see if we can find the moment when our relationship with the dead started to change into something uniquely human. An archaeologist named Paul Pettit came up with this really cool 4-stage model. It starts super basic, millions of years ago, with just detecting decay. Stage 2 is the emotional grief, the kind of thing we might see in chimps or elephants. But stage 3, that's where our ancestors branch off. Mortuary behavior, which is just deliberately handling dead bodies. And eventually, that leads to stage 4, the elaborate, symbolic rituals we all think of as human burials. Now, that jump to stage 3 is a huge mystery, and it's centered on 2 incredible archaeological sites. You've got Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones, in Spain, and the Dinaledi Chamber in South Africa. Both are these deep, nearly impossible-to-get-to caves that are just filled with the remains of multiple ancient hominins. And the big question is, how on earth did they get there? And this was no peaceful cemetery. The investigation at Cima de los Huesos is like a true, ancient cold case. Forensic analysis of one of the skulls showed 2 separate, devastating blows to the head, probably done face-to-face with the same weapon. This suggests these bodies weren't carefully laid to rest. They might have just been disposed of, maybe after a violent fight. So you have these ancient human relatives deliberately putting bodies in these deep, dark pits. It's a huge step beyond anything we see other animals do, but it's still not exactly a modern funeral. So, what's the key difference? What is it that makes our awareness of death so unique? This quote from archaeologist Mary Steiner about Cima de los Huesos, man, it just says it all, doesn't it? There are bodies in there, but there's no love. There's an action happening, getting rid of bodies. But that emotional connection, the care, the ritual that we associate with saying goodbye to a loved one, that seems to be totally missing. It feels functional, not symbolic. And this might be the answer. The monumental, game-changing leap in thinking isn't just understanding that other things die. It's that chilling, profound realization that death is universal, that it is inevitable, and that it's going to happen to you. That specific awareness of our own mortality seems to be the real dividing line. Okay, so let's bring this all together. The evidence seems to suggest that a minimal, functional concept of death, just recognizing that something has permanently stopped working, is probably pretty common all across the animal kingdom. But the existential burden, the philosophical, emotional weight of knowing your own time is running out, that might just be a uniquely human experience. Which leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. When we look at that grieving dog, or that mother orca carrying her calf, are we just seeing a less complicated version of our own sadness? Or are we getting a small glimpse into a profoundly different kind of experience? One filled with deep loss and attachment, but totally free from the uniquely human burden of knowing that one day death comes for us all?